Okay, is now the time to lock in interest rates? Look, the Bank of Canada yesterday didn't make any changes. The fixed rates in Canada have been creeping up slowly. But here's what's going on. Here's the big picture. The US Fed has had low interest rates for it seems like a decade now, and it has almost been a decade, and the structural problems down there really haven't been fixed. The economy has not been healed. No matter what the headlines say, if you look at some of the data, the economy's not firing on all cylinders, in our humble opinion, down there. So it's almost like the Fed has had low interest rates for so long, they really haven't fixed the economy in any really sustainable way. But they've also had this moment where they've just realized that, holy smokes, there hasn't been a recession in the US since 2008, 2009, 2010, and we're almost due for another recession just on historical norms. It's almost time for another recession, but we've left interest rates so low. The Fed funds rate down there is at 0.75 right now. They can't reduce rates in any meaningful way if another recession hits. So it's almost like they've just come out and announced saying they're going to raise rates going forward. And it looks like in 2017, the plan is to do 3 or 4 quarter point raises, and to do that for the next 2 or 3 years to try to raise rates in the 3% range. And the idea of getting rates that high in the US is so that if a recession hits, they have room to kind of lower rates. So that's going on, but at the same time, you have a new president coming in the U.S. Trump is getting inaugurated tomorrow, and he's basically said that he wants to spend whatever it is. I forget the number. If I recall, it was like $1 trillion in different spending to rebuild the airports and bridges and highways in the U.S. and really to rebuild that country. Now, so you have a government that looks like they want to spend a lot of money. You have a Federal Reserve who wants to raise interest rates. So to us, we're at a moment in time where we got to look at things and think, are we really going to survive over the next 4 or 5 years without some sort of recession? It might be small, it might be big, who knows, hitting the US. Or inflation through this kind of runaway spending really enter the economy in a big way. And the chances that one of those things doesn't hit seems like it's decreasing by the day over the next 5 years. So if that's the case, right now might be the time to consider locking in interest rates, especially here in Canada, where you can get a variable rate now for, I'm going to generalize here a little bit, and it'll depend on you and your properties and so forth, but maybe around 2.5%, and you can get a fixed rate for maybe 2.8%, 2.9% for a 5-year term. So with such a small difference between a variable rate and a fixed rate, if you have any properties where you're concerned on the mortgage and the carrying costs and you don't want any spikes in the carrying costs, now might be a good time to lock in rates. Nick and I can remember times when we were getting mortgages almost at 5%. I believe it was 4.65 or 4.85, where we were getting one rate at 4.85, and the variable rate back then was like 3.6 or 3.5 or something like that. So it was over a 1-point difference. Whereas right now, the difference between the variable rate and the fixed rate is so small. To get that insurance of having a fixed rate, it might make sense. Do we think low interest rates are going to stay for a long time? Yeah, it's going to be a slow, gradual move up. And if any unexpected economic events do hit that are negative in any way, it'll halt any increases and maybe go down further from this point. So there is some risk that if you lock in rates now, that you could be losing the advantage of lower rates going forward. But it's also a time where there's enough volatility, and the chances of either recession or inflation hitting in the next 5 years in a meaningful way does seem like it's increasing. It may be time on at least some of your properties where you're concerned the most of to lock in those rates, especially when the difference between variable and fixed is so small. So hopefully that helps in some way. Until next time, your life, your terms.